Okay, we're going to go ahead and kick off. Welcome, everyone, to the latest Northern Ireland at Boston College Global Leadership Conversation. Today, we are really honored to have with us Minister Diane Dodds, Minister for the Economy in Northern Ireland, and she's going to be talking about her work and her leadership in economic recovery from the COVID crisis. Before we introduce the minister, I'd like to introduce our partner in this program, the director of the Northern Ireland Bureau, Andrew Elliott. Andrew.
Thank you, Bob. Just to say, it's been a real pleasure working with you and in collaboration with the Global Leadership Institute on this series, looking at leadership in Northern Ireland. And of course, our initial focus has been on leaders in government here, where, to use an expression maybe quoted recently by President Joe Biden, we're very used to working across the aisle, in that the Northern Ireland Executive, of course, is drawn from right across the political spectrum and involves collaborative decision-making and some of the most challenging issues that society faces in 2021. So I'm really particularly delighted today that we have Diane Dodds, who is our Minister for the Economy, and she's taken time out of her busy schedule to join us today. Diane has a ministerial portfolio that for any economy minister is extremely wide-ranging, in that she covers not just the economy, but also further and higher education, and of course a wide range of issues including energy, tourism, and also very fundamentally dealing with the challenges of the pandemic and the impact that that has had on the Northern Ireland economy. Diane was first elected to the Northern Ireland Assembly for the Democratic Unionist Party in 2003, when she then moved to the European Parliament as a member of the European Parliament in 2009 until the UK left the EU in 2020. My last posting was in Brussels, so I was really pleased to have the chance to get to know Diane extremely well, particularly through those really challenging times when Brexit was being negotiated. And Diane, as an independent in the Parliament, had a very significant role in engaging with decision makers around the shaping of the Brexit process itself. Diane's husband, Nigel, was made a peer in 2020, so I'm very conscious that I should perhaps reference the fact that Diane is now Lady Dodds of Duncairn. I hope I've correctly described that, Diane. It's a real pleasure to introduce her as well. And I want to say this one more thing, because we've talked a little bit about Europe already. I know that Diane has a really long-standing interest in the United States and has spent a lot of time engaging with and being in the United States. And although we're online today and everything is virtual, my money is on Diane being one of the first ministers to be back in the United States whenever that becomes possible, because of the interest she has taken. And she played a really important leadership role last year during St. Patrick's Day in being here when it was impossible for other ministers to attend. So I'll hand back to you now, Bob, to talk to Diane. I very much look forward to the discussion.
Thank you very much, Andrew, and thank you for your partnership on this program. It's been exciting to work with you to deliver this third installment. As Andrew has already told us, the minister has a long political history, both up in Stormont and in the European Union. And I'm excited to dig into this. Thank you, Minister, for joining us. Just to point out to everybody who's joining us, and if you haven't joined us before, please feel free to ask questions. And you can do that via the Q&A function and the chat function here in Zoom. So please ask those and I'll try to get those across. If you have joined us before, you probably know that we don't get to them all, but I'll do my best. Andrew's already, Minister, outlined your political heritage a little bit, but I think a key part of that was that and this is pretty phenomenal, you spent 11 years in Brussels and have only this past year returned to the executive as the MLA for the upper band and the Minister for the Economy. I think maybe we just take a step back from that first. What motivated you to enter politics? You went to Queen's University, Belfast, and took an interest in it. But how did you go from, that moment graduating from QUB and then, taking the decision to run as an MLA and represent West Belfast?
Well, Thank you so much, Bob, and to Andrew as well for the very kind introduction today. I have not met you before, Bob, and I do look forward, as Andrew said, I would like to be one of the first ministers back on the plane, and I look forward to catching up at another time when I'm back in the United States. I've known Andrew for a very long time through his work at Stormont in the Northern Ireland government, but also because our times in Brussels coincided. I probably was always interested in politics. I obviously come from a unionist tradition, and I've always been intensely interested in the union, but also just in, if I could say it, like bread and butter politics we talk about here, the everyday politics. I joined the Democratic Unionist Party when I was at university. And those were very testing times in Northern Ireland, and quite testing times to be a member of the Democratic Unionist Party. And I don't say that lightly. Then proceeded to become a teacher, have a family, and then in 2003 was elected for West Belfast. That was quite a momentous election, because in West Belfast I was the first unionist representative to represent that constituency. 6 members from the Assembly would represent that constituency in the Northern Ireland government, and 5 of them were nationalists or Republicans, and I was the one unionist. And that was the first time in 2003 since 1974 that a unionist had been elected there. So it was a very exciting time. And from there I went on to the European Parliament, which was again intensely interesting, particularly, as Andrew said, after 2016 and the referendum and the negotiations to leave the European Union. So what motivates me over all these long years in politics, I suppose it's like everything else. It's the sense of trying to do better and trying to do good. And since I came back to Northern Ireland from Brussels to be in the local assembly here and to take on my role as the finance minister, I was able to go to the States once over the St. Patrick's Day celebrations last year. We came home and then virtually everything has been dominated by COVID, the pandemic, the health crisis, the economic implications of all of that. And those are extremely severe and tough for all of our communities here, both I know in the States and here in Northern Ireland. Those are really tough times.
Yeah, the since St. Patrick's Day last year, it's been quite a whirlwind. I remember, of course, St. Patrick's Day was right at that cusp between lockdown or not. You know, is it too dangerous to travel or isn't? You know, last year when you were out, I mean, how did you find the audience that you did meet? And I understandably, it was an unusual year. Not everybody was there, but you know, when you met, you know, political and economic and social leaders in the, you know, from the United States at the St. Patrick's Day events, what were you hearing from them? What kinds of things were they talking with you about?
Well, I think that everyone was very interested that after that period of time when devolution, when Northern Ireland did not have its own government, and the re-establishment of government here in on the 11th of January last year, people were very intensely interested as to how that would work, how it was going to work, what the things that we were going to do, and our connections with our wider markets and our wider world. And of course, for us, North America is an extremely important partner. We have more firms who come from North America for investing in Northern Ireland than any other part of the world. We have very strong cultural and family connections with North America. So I had some wonderful times with some tourism leaders in North America. I met some political leaders I really had really good engagement about Northern Ireland, about what we want to do to recreate and grow the economy, how the local government here would work on community relations, how we would attract tourism, and really to tell the message that the Northern Ireland that I grew up in is not the Northern Ireland of today, and that I think as one leader, one CEO from a company actually from North America said to me the other day, the Northern Ireland economy is constantly reinventing itself and reorientating itself, and really attracting companies who are at the cutting edge of some very exciting opportunities, particularly in the digital sphere. So, you know, we had a great time. It's very disappointing that I wasn't able to come back, but I look forward to being back, because this is Northern Ireland's centenary year. Northern Ireland is 100 years old this year. So I look forward to being back. I look forward to promoting Northern Ireland as a good place to do business, to work, to live, to visit. This year as well, we're opening in my hometown here a new visitor attraction. It is the visitor attraction where the Game of Thrones was filmed. It was just filmed literally just about 5 minutes from my house. So that is going to open this year, and you can come, and we hope to welcome visitors from across the world again when the time is right.
Well, hopefully the pandemic will recede soon, and we'll all be able to travel again. It's been a little over a year since I've been to Northern Ireland. I miss it immensely. Always have a great time when I go, and there's obviously lots of deep connections for Boston College and for people in Boston to Northern Ireland and Belfast in particular. It's interesting you mentioned the Game of Thrones. Our students, it's always a highlight for them when they travel to Ireland to study, is to visit the Game of Thrones filming sites. So I haven't actually seen the show myself, but our students do love it. We'll come back to the North American piece in the course of this conversation. But I kind of wanted to get into the period just before you came back to Stormont. At the time you spent in Brussels, you spent 11 years as an MEP in Brussels. You supported Brexit, but you didn't support the deal that was developed, around the protocol. And so maybe you can explain that position a little bit, especially to our American audience, because I think there probably is some confusion in the United States about what it means to oppose the deal and also support, the UK leaving the European Union.
Well, I spent 11 years in the European Parliament, and through that I met many, many people, was exposed to many cultures, languages. It's an intensely interesting and different legislature to be a part of. And that was a great privilege, because Northern Ireland only elects 3 people to go and represent Northern Ireland in the European Parliament. So to be one of only 3 people and to be entrusted with that was an extremely huge, I used to say it was the greatest privilege of my life, but probably also the greatest responsibility. That is until I became the economy minister and we had a global pandemic and huge economic difficulties. So I like a challenge, always like a challenge. So I voted and to leave the European Union because I think that the United Kingdom is a great country, that the United Kingdom can manage always on its own. My party has always been Eurosceptic, and there were many areas that decisions were made that fundamentally affected the lives of people in Northern Ireland, that really only 3 people out of 750 in a parliament could actually bring so much influence to bear on. So I voted to leave, and I think that that was a valid democratic choice. But the settlement that our Prime Minister has opted for, I think, is very difficult for Northern Ireland. So we have the general agreement to leave, the Trade and Cooperation Agreement, but we also have what's known as the Northern Ireland Protocol. And that protocol essentially sets up significant barriers to trade between us and our greatest market in GB. For Northern Ireland, and I think it's an easy way of describing it, we do more trade in the GB market, in the Great Britain market, than we do in the whole of Europe, the whole of the Republic of Ireland, and the rest of the world added together. So it's the most significant market that Northern Ireland has, both for selling into and for buying from. And the protocol, that element of the deal that deals with Northern Ireland, has presented huge difficulties for Northern Ireland in that respect. So I voted to leave. I think that's a valid choice that we can do, but the protocol represents some significant barriers to trade with the rest of the United Kingdom. However, it does open up some other opportunities because we have unfettered trade with the European Union. So we can trade freely with Europe. And I think they're in present, and as well as trading freely into the United Kingdom. And I think therein lies some opportunities for investment in Northern Ireland. We will be exploring those in the near future.
Okay, that's great. We can unpack some of that as we go. There are a few questions coming in to Brexit. We can get into a little bit into that topic a little bit deeper, and then the pitch that you're making for Northern Ireland on the world economy based on the Brexit deal. But before we do, you've already brought up COVID and the challenges that brought as you were stepping into the role of minister for the economy. So, when you came into that role, what were beyond, like, through the COVID challenges, what were the most significant things that were pressing? Obviously, there was an employment crisis, and there was a retail crisis, and there was crisis in agribusiness and food and transport. Where did you begin, and how did you make a priority of tasks when you came into the role to respond to that?
Well, I think the health pandemic has presented challenges on a variety of levels. So there's the health challenge. And that health challenge was very, very significant. But I think that there was a very united front from the Northern Ireland Executive. And remember, the Northern Ireland Executive is very unlike any other government. It is made up of 5 different political parties. Those are 5 different political parties with different views, different outlooks, etc. So when Andrew describes the kind of way we work, you must get agreement, whether you think of it being as across the aisle in your context, but you must get agreement across those political parties to do something. So I think there was, on a health challenge, there's a general agreement that the pandemic had to be dealt with, people's lives had to be protected, and we needed to do the best we could in order to do that. And we continue to pretty much be in that space. And currently in Northern Ireland, we have some significant restrictions on public life. And of course, as being part of the United Kingdom, we have also had huge and significant inputs of financial support from the Exchequer in London in order for firms and companies and individuals and families to survive that economic hit to their income that almost closing down the economy for a period of time last year actually did. So I think that there's the challenge of health, there's the immediate challenge of sustaining business, and in that, in sustaining income, we have been greatly helped by the fact that billions of pounds have been pumped into Northern Ireland by the Exchequer in London. The third thing really then is to say that with every period of disruption and challenge comes opportunity. So there has been a period of time where we can reevaluate the economy and certain sectors of our economy are actually powering ahead and doing extremely well. So I'm delighted to tell you that just this week, I welcomed a new company from Massachusetts into Northern Ireland, creating 70 jobs and creating a new tech hub for their company. So our digital companies are really powering ahead. Many of our companies whose parent companies are in the States are working completely at home, and productivity is up, innovation is up, and they are winning work in their global companies for Northern Ireland. So with every period of challenge, there comes opportunity. And certainly for our digital sector, that has been an opportunity. And every time I talk to a new company, we welcomed another new company from Boston a few months ago. And every time I talk to a new company that comes to come amongst us in this sector, they talk about the innovation, the tech hub, the creativity, and the skills, and the connection with the universities, the way that that research and development is done in conjunction with universities. And I like to think that the Northern Ireland scene has been kind of small enough and nimble enough to change in the face of great challenges. So, you know, some of our bigger tech companies employing thousands of people successfully work from home and are really doing very, very well. And that's brilliant. I think recently Belfast was voted the second best city in the United Kingdom to do business for tech companies. That's amazing. We're also exploring, you know, the green economy, the digital as well, so that we're not only just looking at sustainable environments, but we're looking at being pioneering leaders in the green economy. So I think there's a level of challenge, but you know, there's also opportunity.
That's great. And in February, we'll be welcoming the president of Queen's University on a similar conversation. So we'll hear more about the collaboration that your department will have, you know, it is having with universities and its role in innovation and developing the economy. I just want to go back one step to you talked about the funds you received from the Exchequer. I think there were about 11 million pounds that came from the Shared Prosperity Fund this year, and but then there was a little bit of a debate about the shortfall from the European Union funding, and you were looking for additional resources to fund projects. Where are you in that conversation? Have you been able to find the additional resources that you've been looking for?
Well, the answer at the moment is yes, but do we have the long term? Because leaving the European Union, looking and working at the kind of programs that we've become accustomed to also means that within a UK context, we have to set up new programs. And my challenge is to convince our national government that their levelling up agenda for the whole of the United Kingdom, in other words, they want to bring prosperity to all parts of the United Kingdom, means that Northern Ireland must be funded adequately and appropriately. So the challenge in the short term has been sorted, mitigated, whatever word you want to use. But the challenge in the long term is to create new funds that actually really work for the United Kingdom. One of the greatest problems with Europe, and it's a problem, I'm fascinated, it's a little bit of the tension that you see between state government and central government is a problem that you see often in the European Union, where decisions are made that are made at a very high level, so decisions made in Brussels. How that translates into local conditions can sometimes be very, very difficult. I believe that decisions are always best made closest to people, because they will understand those decisions, they will have input into those decisions, and they will more appropriately reflect the needs of those areas. So it was very difficult in the European Union to get an agriculture policy that fitted Greece and Northern Ireland, or that fitted Sweden and Northern Ireland. And therefore, I want a UK agriculture policy that fits the United Kingdom, but allows for regional divergence. And it's the same with the kind of the Shared Prosperity Fund that replaced the European ASF and ERDF funding that we would have had.
Yeah, that's a very interesting sort of challenge that many governments face between centralized and local, and how the two interact. In terms of the local decision making, last June, I think it was, you stood up the Economic Advisory Group again, and there's some very very eminent people on that, and I think it's a really interesting panel of people, and they've been focused on some of the things you've already been talking about: challenges, to increasing productivity and the rate of high-paying jobs, and then capitalizing on the skills development that exists in Northern Ireland. You've mentioned the digital economy, and we could talk a lot more about that. But what other areas are you looking to grow? You've mentioned the green economy. Are there other areas that your government is or your office is focused on?
Well, yes, thank you. Last year, in the middle of our COVID pandemic, we brought out our Rebuilding a Stronger Economy document. And that helped us to focus our minds on areas that we see that are areas of growth. As I've mentioned, Northern Ireland is 100 years old this year. 100 years ago, we built ships, we had rope works, we made linen. We were leading the world in all of those things. Today, we're leading the world in cyber, in the digital economy. And I want then for us to focus our strengths on those areas of the economy that are for the future, that will really help us to future-proof the economy and build that economy for tomorrow. So we're looking at further innovation and expansion of our digital economy. We're looking at health and life sciences, because actually one of the benefits of where we are now is that our regulatory system will be recognised in the UK, it will be recognised in the European Union. It will be a good place for health and life sciences to do business. And we are focusing on the green economy. How can we actually gain market edge by having that sustainable environment, by having that green economy? How can we bring prosperity through the green economy? And the other element of this that ties it all together is the investment in skills. When I talk to companies that come to Northern Ireland, and I often ask them, you could have gone anywhere. Why did you come to Northern Ireland? You have no link with Northern Ireland. Why did you come? And they always inevitably talk about skills. And they talk about the really good pipeline of really high skilled young people. They talk about our programs of collaboration between universities and business in order to improve and develop skills. They talk about what we call our assured skills academies. So many of our businesses will come and say to us, we have a shortage of skills in a particular area, or we want to develop skills in a particular area. And in collaboration with our universities, we will set up skills academies that respond to the needs of the economy and of the businesses that we are dealing with. So we want to look forward, we want to build the economy of the future, and we want to focus on the skills of our people. These are strengths that we already have, but we think that we can grow and be really, really leading and world-class in.
It's certainly very interesting work that you've been doing. I noticed during the pandemic, your office funded 400 positions, or 400 offers for people to take up online upskilling with Queen's University. I mean, is that something, and the areas that those programs were in were related to growth areas for the Northern Ireland economy. So it wasn't just, at random across the university, it was very focused. Is that something you see as a model that other states might develop as, you know, a means for helping to exit from the COVID crisis and the COVID economy? Or is this something, kind of going back to your tensions around the central and the local, is this really about learning for Northern Ireland in kind of a micro way?
I think it's a really useful model that others can replicate. The real issue here is to get skills that match the needs in the short term, but in the longer term, to make sure that the economy, the skills and the economy match, and that we are driving the two forward together. And that's a hugely challenging but important way of working. So I'm about to release a new skills strategy. I would like to look at what we're describing as a digital spine for Northern Ireland, so that so that children in school learn to code, that they really become really focused on the digitization, which will underpin everything that we do in the future, but that they do it as part of it's part of the natural way that they do things, and part of a natural. I mean, for me, it wasn't. I'm way too old for all of that. But this is part of what they do. This is just their way of working. So that's a really important thing that we do. We want to match skills to future-proof the economy, but we also want to be nimble and flexible enough to be able to respond to the needs of industry by setting up the assured skills academies to respond to that. We have a really amazing advanced manufacturing sector in Northern Ireland. I was talking to a company recently in Northern Ireland, and their fastest and growing market is Texas. And of course, they're supplying huge machinery and so on into the economy there because of the construction and crushing and industry. So one of the things that they came and said to us, well, look, we need more welders. We need people with these skills to really drive forward this sector. We're currently running a number of assured skills academies in welding. So they're not just for the young graduates, they're also for the young apprentices who will learn a trade and do something really well. So it's about being nimble, it's about responding, it's about using COVID, that terrible disruptor that it has been, but to accelerate something that's actually good, and making sure that the economy is more nimble and more focused on how we progress for the future.
There's a question that's come in from a person here in Boston who works in business development and helping companies grow, both locally, but also specifically in Northern Ireland. And the question is basically is this too much of a good thing? She's asking about the tech talent and the wages. And she says that, you know, what she's noticed is that a lot of international companies have been incentivized by InvestNI to come to Belfast, but sometimes the local companies are having trouble competing with them for tech and for tech talent and based on wages. Is this something that you know, your office has noticed? If so, how are you looking to balance that? InvestNI has done outstanding work in promoting FDI. You know, what are you doing kind of locally to match that?
Well, I mean, there will always be a tension in the economy, and for many that's very healthy, because for many people who particularly work in the tech sector, their particular part of the economy has really healthy competition and pressures within it. But from a policy perspective, the really important thing for me is to look at how we match skills to the growing needs of the economy. So therefore, I'm responsible for the economy, but I'm also responsible for universities and further education. I'm looking at, you know, how do we match university life, university work, university research and innovation to the needs of the economy? That's massively important. and actually really exciting, I think, to do that. Can I mention one of the things that we've been working on with our national government on is the creation of city deals. So currently in the next year in Northern Ireland, I will avail of about £500 million of funding for city deals for Northern Ireland. That funding is then going to be matched by the Stormont Executive and by local councils, so that we will be having a rolling programme of investment into the economy. And that investment is going to be in research and innovation. It's going to be in the digital economy. It's going to be in advanced manufacturing. It's going to be in health and life sciences. And it's going to be in tourism. And those are the areas that will focus on. So, and that is new money that is coming into the economy. And it will help to create the skills, it will help to create innovation, and it will drive a more competitive and I hope productive outcome for the economy. And at the bottom of it all is better outcomes for people and families. So there's always a healthy tension in the economy. There's always a need to get the skills balance right. And of course, I do actually think, and I attended the Invest Northern Ireland board meeting today and discussed with them our plans for the next 12 months. And therefore, looking for and securing foreign direct investment is hugely important. And that collaborative tension as well between what you're doing in North America and what we're doing here is really significant in driving some of those companies forward.
That's interesting, and you referenced Invest NI just there, and you talked about EverQuote earlier, and Invest NI played a significant role in those 70 positions. At the same time, earlier this year, Caterpillar trimmed its workforce by about 700. So, and this is something that we see in Massachusetts, see all over the place. Heavy industry might be trimming, and knowledge economy might be growing. But the knowledge economy is growing maybe slower than you might be losing jobs in industry and other places. I mean, is there a way you think that your office can make up for job losses, through the strategy, or is there additional work that needs to be done beyond kind of what you've already outlined?
Well, there's always a huge amount to do. And one of the things that perhaps COVID has shown us is that long winding supply chains are more difficult to manage in a health pandemic than we previously would have known. The Caterpillar example that you saw is really a multinational company realigning, restructuring, reorganizing, and going closer to markets. What's really interesting is that the part that Caterpillar keeps in Northern Ireland is those parts that require really, really high-skilled people to do very specific, bespoke solutions for companies across the world. And those are the high-value, high-paying jobs that actually stayed in Northern Ireland, because those require the knowledge, the research, the innovation, and the talent. And what was really interesting was that that's the part that actually stayed in Northern Ireland. And that's still a very large part of their workforce, but it's one of the really high skilled ends of their workforce that's producing very, very bespoke solutions for clients across the world.
I think many politicians around the world are struggling with the same issues of supply chain management and the location of multinational suits. So Northern Ireland's not alone in this. In terms of the supply chain management, Brexit became real over the past year, and the Northern Ireland Protocol was introduced. There were, in the immediate after effects, of the new year, there was perhaps a supply chain issue. Some supermarkets were having trouble supplying goods. We read reports about fishermen having difficulty getting their product to market, and some other issues. You yourself, pointed out that it's been difficult to help businesses prepare for Brexit when so much came so late. The agreement came so late, so it was difficult to prepare people for EU customs forms and to help companies. What's the current situation right now? Maybe has that improved at all, or is there is that going to continue to improve, or is there an ongoing challenge you think around some of these supply chain issues?
Well, I think and I think many of the people on this call will know that for business really to succeed and do well, they like certainty. So the uncertainty of a deal and the detail of that deal only becoming known at the very last minute was very, very difficult. So hence, and therein lay some of the challenges in the first few weeks of this deal. There's no doubt that some of it will settle. Some of it will provide Northern Ireland with quite a unique position. And other parts of it will just continue to be difficult to manage, although people will become slicker, and I have absolutely no doubt that the market will adapt to those conditions. But I think the biggest challenge that we've had is the late deal and the fact that the protocol itself gives us that kind of problem with trade between GB and Northern Ireland. It's interesting, the trade between Northern Ireland and GB is flowing reasonably well. And that is because that is in the gift of the government, our national government in London, to make sure that that flows reasonably well. So we have one area where it is flowing reasonably well. The difficulties lie with the restrictions that the European Union have put into it and the compliance with single market rules, which means that trade from GB to Northern Ireland is not frictionless and is subject to customs rules, rules of origin, the kind of thing that you would expect in this area. So the lateness of it and the difficulty of that from a GBNI perspective, but the part of it that is economically attractive is the fact that Northern Ireland has that unfettered access to GB and it has that unfettered access to the European Union.
One of the participants in the webinar is asking about your view in the protocol. The participant says that the protocol was established to protect the principles of the Good Friday Agreement. So what their question really is what's the alternative to the protocol, or is there an alternative to the protocol?
Well, I suppose I think that many people misunderstand the Good Friday Agreement. The Good Friday Agreement set up a very complex checks of rights and checks and balances to make sure that the two communities here in Northern Ireland could feel equally valued and have equal rights. And one of those things that I think is really important, and perhaps I think that many people misunderstood, was the fact that for unionism, there was no consent for the protocol and the way that the protocol is being implemented. In fact, I'd go further in that the British government, at the behest of the European Union, have actually changed the consent mechanism in the Belfast Agreement in order to deal with the protocol. So in our local assembly, if there is a contentious issue that requires consent, then consent must be given from both communities. And actually, what the government have now done is to make sure that it is just by a majority vote, that in 4 years' time, for example, when we come to review the protocol, it would be a majority vote. It would not, and it does upset and is contrary to the terms of the Good Friday Agreement. But one of the things I think we must honestly realise is that we have to deal with the difficulties of the protocol. I didn't vote for it. I don't want it. and I don't really like it. I think that barriers between us and our biggest market are very, very difficult for the Northern Ireland economy. But we will have to mitigate against the problems and look for opportunity.
There are a number of questions here that extend on the Brexit and the fallout from Brexit. There's one here referencing a poll in the Sunday Times that showed the majority of people wanted a border poll in the next 10 years. And so the question here is what's your pitch to those people who are unsure about where they would sit on the poll to remain in the union? So, I mean, I think some of your arguments are already been made around the unique position that Northern Ireland now occupies between the European Union and the UK economy. But, you know, is there more to an argument about for those people who want to remain in the union?
Well, you know, I am a unionist by choice and by conviction, and that's hugely important to me. I think that the union of Great Britain and Northern Ireland is a hugely successful, long-standing union. And of course, with Northern Ireland's centenary, we will celebrate that union again this year in its forms. The union is diverse. It is pluralist, it is multicultural, it is many, many things, and it provides huge benefits for me as someone who believes in that union. And for me, that is a cause that, you know, one of the reasons I became involved in politics, because I intensely believe in that union. I also believe in devolution. So I believe that and the DUP has always been a devolutionist party. So we will always believe that power is best exercised closest to the people, but with that sovereignty that rests in London. But I also believe in a union of respect and respect for myself as a unionist and respect for my neighbours. So what is my pitch? Well, first of all, this is me. I am fundamentally a unionist, and that is one of the abiding political philosophies that drives my political well-being. But I see the union as not just being diverse, multicultural. There are huge benefits of belonging to the 5th largest economy in the world. That has been demonstrated over and over again with the COVID pandemic. We have had billions pumped into Northern Ireland from the Exchequer in London so that our people could live and survive in the most extreme and difficult of circumstances. So I believe it's financially advantageous. Our health service is another reason to support the union. So I want a union that delivers for everyone, and I want a Northern Ireland that is stable and prosperous within the union. I understand that not everybody shares my view. That's fine. But I also want those views to be challenged democratically, and that's very, very, very important. And I think fundamentally, just if I could finish with this, the Northern Ireland that I grew up in, the Belfast that I went to university in, is not the Northern Ireland of today. It is a much different place. It is an incredibly different place. And I think if people came to Belfast and to other parts of Northern Ireland, I think that their views of Northern Ireland would be challenged somewhat.
It's certainly changed dramatically over the past number of years. You know, I lived for a number of years in Dublin, but I would travel twice a week up to Belfast, and I saw the border posts come down over time and how things changed so dramatically. So that's, of course, quite exciting. You know, the New Decade New Approach document committed everyone to keeping the executive functioning. Obviously, the history of the executive since the cessation of the Troubles, you know, has been on and off. It doesn't always sit. I mean, in your judgment, what is the health of the executive now? Is it functioning as it should, or does more need to be done to ensure that that the power sharing system there is stable in delivering?
Well, I think that there is a huge commitment to making politics and to making Northern Ireland work for the benefit of its people. I actually don't believe that people are in the executive in a destructive or any of those kind of ways that you want to describe it. It has generally been a constructive, positive engagement. I think people want to make things better. And I think that, and I have often said this, I've often reflected on this, if we had had a COVID pandemic, if we had had the huge challenges for our society without a local government, I fear to think of the outcome. And I think that that kind of huge, huge challenge has made people rise above many of the issues and having to make a five-party executive work. There is no doubt about it that these things are difficult. We would be foolish and it would be utter folly not to recognise that. You will recognise how difficult it is to work for consensus. And when I want to drive a policy forward, I have to work for consensus across 5 political parties. That's quite a challenge. So no one is underestimating the difficulty. But I think that that kind of constructive engagement, that effort to make life better, that effort to deal with the pandemic has been, I just fear for where Northern Ireland would be had that not been the case. Have we done everything wonderfully well? Time will tell. But there has been a huge effort on behalf of people in Northern Ireland during a difficult time.
Minister, we're just about out of time, but before we go, I did want to get your insight on the new relationship that will develop between Northern Ireland and the United States under the Biden administration. Mick Mulvaney is no longer the special envoy. Perhaps there'll be a new special envoy soon. But what do you anticipate the Biden administration being? How do you anticipate them being helpful in Northern Ireland? What is it that they can do that would best support the work of the executive and the people of Northern Ireland?
Well, I, of course, look forward to President Biden's administration. I wish him every success for that administration. I mean, it will be hugely, hugely challenging, but then I think that governments across the world are hugely challenged in the things that they have to do. So I wish them every success. I'm looking forward to, for example, welcoming the new Chancellor of Queen's University, Hillary Clinton, when she is able to make her first visit to Belfast as the Chancellor of Queen's University. So the links between the wider Democratic and Biden administration are very, very strong with Northern Ireland, and I look forward to working with them. In America, the states are a huge, huge economic, cultural, and huge family ties between us. And I think that we will be able to drive things forward. And as I said, I think that many, and I will take many opportunities as soon as I can to come over and maybe meet you in person and talk in person on these things. And within the next, I think, number of weeks, I'm going to be meeting in our virtual world that we live in at the moment, a number of North American tour operators who are still taking bookings for Northern Ireland for 2021, who want to know that we're open, ready to do business, and ready to welcome many more people to our shores. So, you know, I wish the administration well. I look forward to working with them. I think that we can work together to do things for all people here in Northern Ireland.
Thank you, Minister. We are just about out of time. We've taken up an hour of your time, and I really do appreciate it. I'm sorry if I didn't get to the questions. There are a couple of other questions that remain here, outstanding questions. And I think the only way to settle this, Minister, is to have you here at Boston College to answer these in person with an audience. We do look forward to the day when you can come to Chestnut Hill at Boston College and visit with us here. We very much like that, and the door is always open to you and your colleagues. I want to thank everyone for attending today. We have a couple of more, 3 more webinars that are scheduled in the near term. The next Northern Ireland at Boston College conversation will be with the president of Queen's University on February 24th. In the interim, we'll be speaking with Minister Colin Brophy, the Minister for State with responsibility for diaspora, on February 9th. And then following that, we will have the Speaker of the Scottish Parliament on with us. So we will be investigating some of these issues of devolution and the relationship between the different political voices across Ireland and Great Britain. Thank you again, Minister, for joining us. It was a real pleasure to speak with you. Thank you for highlighting the good work that's happening in Northern Ireland and the role that you're playing in helping to facilitate the growth of its economy, and then also being honest with us about where some of those challenges might lie for you and your colleagues. Thank you again.
Thank you. It was very, very nice of you to invite me. I am in some very illustrious company.
We appreciate it. We hope to talk to you again soon. Thank you, everybody. We'll talk to you.
Yeah.